Aloha again, and mahalo for joining today's webinar. My name is Jill, and I'll be your MC as well as one of your presenters this evening. This month, we are joined by our partners of SoilThrive Hawaii LLC and Maui Gold Pineapple Farm. Tonight, you will hear from myself as well as our partners about our reef-friendly landscaping program and how we are working together to support Maui Gold's sustainability initiatives. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. Tonight's presentation is part of Maui Nui Marine Resource Council's monthly Know Your Ocean speaker series, usually held on the first Wednesday of each month at 5:30 p.m. via Zoom. This monthly series is supported by the County of Maui, so mahalo to them for making tonight's talk possible. As a quick side note, if you haven't already, you can sign up for our monthly e-newsletter, Reef and Brief, to receive updates on future talks and events from MNMRC. The sign-up link will be available in the chat. Maui Nui Marine Resource Council is a 501c3 nonprofit working for clean ocean water, healthy coral reefs, and abundant native fish since 2007. We believe that healthy coral reefs mean healthy communities and that every living thing in Maui is connected. So we protect the reefs by focusing our assessment, monitoring, and restoration efforts from Mauka to Makai. Working Mauka to Makai means we work on land as well as in the ocean throughout the year, doing things like testing water quality conditions at over 39 locations around the island, regularly monitoring local fish and reef populations, and certifying property owners and landscaping professionals to use natural alternatives to toxic herbicides and pesticides. On that note, our final reef-friendly landscaping course for the year is open for enrollment. This course will be online with an opportunity for an in-person workday on November 16th. It covers 10 topics using site analysis and design, soil health, native, exotic, and invasive plants, and energy, pollution, and climate change. We all know how fragile our ecosystems are here in Hawaii, so let's do our part to make sure the landscaping on our island helps and doesn't hurt this beautiful place we call home. To sign up, please visit mauireefs.org/RFL. You can also join that in-person workday on November 16th in North Kihei at Waiahuli Kai Wetland Restoration Project. We will be weeding and removing invasive plants to support wetland restoration. We'll be working from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. with Cody Nemeth, the wetlands caretaker. You can scan the QR code here on the slide or to sign up, or you can email rfl@mauireefs.org. Please be sure to bring a hat, sun protection, water, and a snack. And if you want, you can bring a friend. A few notes before we introduce our speakers. We'll leave time at the end of the presentation to answer your questions. Please hold your questions until the end of the talk. This presentation is also being recorded and will be available on our YouTube account in the next few days. And now for our speakers. My name is Jill. I'm the program director here at Maui Nui Marine Resource Council. I manage our RFL program and coral conservation program. So today I'll be focusing on telling you all about how the RFL program has grown, as well as our partnership with Maui Gold. We also have Shar O'Brien, who is a managing director for SoilThrive Hawaii LLC, and executive director of Food Security Hawaii, which is a 501c3 nonprofit. Shar holds a Bachelor of Science in Agronomy with high honors from Michigan State University with an additional 3 years of agricultural technical training in Denmark, Norway, and Austria. She farmed organically for 23 years, specializing in feed crops and breeding high genetic dairy cattle and small-scale poultry raising. In 2008, Shar founded Carbon Drawdown Solutions and committed to the regenerative agricultural movement. We will also have Darren Strand. Darren has been farming pineapple in Hawaii for 23 years, starting at Del Monte Fresh Produce on Oahu in 2001 and moving to Maui Gold in 2004. While pineapple agriculture is in his blood, he has experience in grass-fed cattle, citrus management, vegetable production, as well as commercial coffee, banana, and papaya farming. He served as Maui County Farm Bureau President for 12 years, was the Hawaii Farm Bureau Federation Vice President for 3 years, and was elected President of Hawaii Farm Bureau Federation earlier this year. His wife, Amy, is the principal of a local high school, and together they have 4 children that are 24, 21, 18, and 13. As a family, they can be found enjoying the Maui lifestyle, enjoying days at the beach surfing, diving for papio, hunting wild pig, or sometimes just sitting by the pool, enjoying everything Maui has to offer. So with that, I will be pulling up my slides to start us off with the Reef-Friendly Landscaping Program. Going to do this. Okay, here is our Reef-Friendly Landscaping Program. Again, Maui Nui Marine Resource Council, we are a nonprofit working for healthy coral reefs, clean ocean water, and abundant native fish. We really need healthy coral reefs. Hawaii's coral reefs specifically are valued at $10 billion. Hawaii's nearshore reefs annually generate about $800 million in gross revenues. And the benefits of Hawaii's coral reefs include acting as a coastal buffer to wave action and erosion. They provide a major source of food and resources, are very important to Hawaiian culture, and provide a habitat for a biodiversity of marine organisms and provide great places for recreation. On the right here, I've provided the anatomy of a coral polyp. They are alive. They are closely related to jellyfish. And all these little dots on the tentacles are called nematocysts. So those are stinging cells that extend out into the water column on the tentacles and kind of sting and capture food from the water. Closer in, you can see these purple dots here called zooxanthellae. Those are photosynthetic algae that produce about 80% of the coral polyp's diet. Zooxanthellae produce that food through a process called photosynthesis. When things get stressful, like the water's too warm or the water's too acidic, a process called coral bleaching happens, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. But these zooxanthellae are expelled from the coral polyps. Not to mention, the zooxanthellae is what gives the coral all of its color. So when that zooxanthellae is expelled, the coral loses its color and loses its main source of food. Now, our corals are already under a lot of stress due to climate change and sedimentation and runoff. So we want to try to reduce as much of that runoff, harmful runoff, as possible. And that is how the Reef-Friendly Landscaping Program came to fruition. Many impacts from synthetic landscaping products on nearshore coral reefs include pesticides causing birth and development in aquatic animals and contribute to coral bleaching, as I mentioned before. They contain endocrine disruptors causing males to exhibit female traits and behaviors. Synthetic fertilizers cause excess nutrients in the water, such as nitrogen and phosphorus, and can lead to eutrophication and algal blooms, can then lead to oxygen depletion and cause tumor growth in turtles and create higher turbidity. Herbicides also lead to photosynthesis inhibition, so zooxanthellae can't make all that food for the polyps, as well as higher turbidity. So we want to try and reduce as much of these synthetics as possible. Additionally, synthetic water-soluble fertilizers are often petroleum-based and are made in a really intensive process combining ammonia and CO2 using pressure and heat. So it's very extractive and it takes a lot of energy to make these synthetic fertilizers. They're applied to the land and dissolve rapidly and release nitrogen when it comes in contact with soil moisture, rain, and irrigation. The fast dissolving nitrogen really only nourishes the plant for a short time, maybe 4 to 6 weeks, and frequent reapplications are needed, creating an addictive cycle. The fertilizers are only feeding the plant, not really doing anything for the soil. That dissolved nitrogen then quickly enters the groundwater and can be transported to the ocean and then lead to excessive algae growth, which can smother coral and cause reef loss. Some benefits to organic methods is that it focuses on soil health. So you can see here on the right, the difference in the soil color. We're really focusing on building up soil microbes so that they make nutrients more available to the plant. On the chemical side or synthetic side, you're looking at water-soluble fertilizers that, again, only feed the plant for a short amount of time. They're really harsh on the soils. They're really harsh on the small ecosystem of the soil and the plant, and can cause stress for the plant as well. In the long run, when you're creating a healthy soil microbiome that supports the plant, you're creating a system that's stable. You're not creating an addictive input. So the end result is that while the cost might be more upfront, in the long run, you'll see a financial savings within the first 3 to 5 years switching to organic methods, just by focusing on soil health and soil microbiology. And this is kind of what we're trying to emphasize and focus on with the Reef Friendly Landscaping Program. Our program sort of has 3 branches in the mix here, and I'll go into each one a little bit more. We have our certifications, our educational course, as well as test plots. Our certifications, we have a gold and a silver level. At the gold level, we have the Four Seasons Resort Lanai, Honokeana Cove in Napili, and silver, we have the Royal Lahaina Resort and Bungalows, Kipuka Olowalu, Paia Youth and Cultural Center. And then in progress, these are properties that have implemented some pieces of reef-friendly landscaping, but haven't completely moved towards getting certified through the Reef-Friendly Landscaping Program. So that's the Four Seasons Wailea, Maui Marriott Ocean Club, the Hyatt Regency, and Papali Wailea. The silver and gold levels are pretty similar. The gold level requires parts of the staff or people on the management team to take our reef-friendly landscaping course and utilize all battery-powered equipment. Silver certified lays out the list of no synthetic fertilizers, no pesticides and herbicides listed on our requirements. Gold still upholds that. It just adds a few more transitions, such as the battery operated or battery powered equipment. So if you would like to get certified, please reach out, rfl@mauireefs.org. We'd love to work with you. The goal is that you show us what you're currently using, and then we provide alternatives to those products and help you make the switch. All of it's confidential. You get a certificate and highlighted in our network. So we would love to work with you and make the transition as easy as possible. Our educational course is being hosted online November 15th through December 15th. We have 10 topics covered by 9 instructors. This is meant to support professional development and increase landscaping offerings for clients who want to avoid synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. We also want to reduce potentially harmful runoff to the reefs. Each course or each topic comes with a quiz to test knowledge, and then you apply the knowledge that you've learned and design your own reef-friendly landscape, and that's the course practicum. This course is developed specifically for Hawaii's unique environment. There is a course that's similar to this in the United States on the East Coast, but a lot of that material is specific for that region. So we wanted to take, a lot of the applicable and transferable knowledge, but then adapt it for Hawaii. So all of our instructors here in the course have been working on island for decades and are a wealth of knowledge. We just want nature to be natural and teach participants how to landscape with less inputs. Our test plot program utilized SoilThrive's biological soil amendment, similar to compost tea, on over 30 or around 30 test plots around the island in partnership with Maui Visitors and Convention Bureau. We saw an increase in soil microbiology, decreased brown patches, healthier foliage, and a potential for water savings. And this product is available and made on island. Our current test plot is happening with Maui Gold. So we're working on a 1-acre plot. Here you can see in the bottom right. We integrated the SoilThrive amendment into their existing system. So we're getting a broad coverage of all of the plants into into the equipment that they're already using. The amendments are microbe-rich and are meant to replace synthetic fertilizers and support the sustainability initiatives that Maui Gold is already implementing on the farm. We're also looking to build capacity. So instead of having to purchase the product or the amendment from off island, we have SoilThrive coming in with this brewer here that you see in the upper left photo. and teaching Maui Gold staff how to brew their own compost tea, which is very exciting. We got that installed this week. We are also doing outreach and education on the farm tours. So when people come out and do a tour of the pineapple farm, they will now see these lovely uhu and learn about the Reef Friendly Landscaping program that's happening at Maui Gold Pineapple Farm. So that is where we're at. I'm going to hand it over to Shar now to talk about the amendment itself, because Shar has been working very hard to develop that and make it successful. So thanks, Shar.
Thank you, Jill. Can you see my, let's see, this one. Get this right. There, perfect. Let's see if
Looks
this thing
great.
works. Okay. So I wanted to start out with a big appreciation for both Darren Strand and Maui Gold. It's inspiring to see such a legendary commercial farming group so sincerely interested in and proactive in regenerative agriculture. They have done an amazing job in switching their chemical inputs to alternatives. We at SoilThrive feel honored to be working with them. And Maui Gold sits on some of the best agricultural soil on the island, and it makes for an idyllic tourist attraction. The tour takes people up into the fields on buses for an experience unlike any other. In fact, I would highly recommend that the residents on this call that would like to experience driving up into the heart of some of the most beautiful agricultural land on Maui go on that tour. It will take you back in time. As I'm sure you know, there's an international movement away from the use of agricultural chemicals that have a detrimental effect on the environment and human health. But the path back to a more natural approach is not as easy as the path that led us to this point. It takes a great deal of trial and error, and we are very thankful to have Maui Nui Marine Research Council, the Maui Tourist Bureau, and the County of Maui supporting this effort for the sake of our island's food security as well as our shoreline protection. So SoilThrive focuses on working with the power of nature. We have two objectives. First is to find non-toxic remedies to help transition our resorts, farmers, and homeowners to regenerative agricultural techniques. For example, using potentized high calcium products together with sugar to loosen soil and feed soil microbes. Trialing pesticides, actual pesticides that have been used for over 100 years that are made out of clam and oyster shells. And experimenting with the many new organic herbicides that are coming on the market and being trialed at places like Harvard. And secondly, we develop and use locally grown, full spectrum microbial inoculants that are quorum sensing, but more about that later. Rather than getting into a lot of biology, I want to start out with photos of impressive ecosystem restorations to showcase what is possible. Oops. So this is Hope Mine in Colorado. It looked this way for 60 years. And somebody finally put some microbes on it. After 16 months, it started to grow biomass. This is the Ho Chi Minh Trail in Vietnam after the Vietnam War. It was, of course, obliterated. And today, that same river is gorgeous. I used to work in this area. And it's the way they did it is the young communist government said, okay, we don't have any money, but we can give you rice. If you'll go out and plant bamboo for one day, we'll give you a kilo of rice. And that's how they planted a huge area of Vietnam in bamboo. And today they have a thriving ecosystem and a bamboo economy that supports everybody in the area. This is the Lost Plateau in China. This is 1995. This was a World Bank project. It's the size of Holland. It's a huge area. And this is the same photo 10 years later. So you can see it really is possible. Back to how they made the terraces in the Lost Plateau. The World Bank paid the local farmers to come out and do the work, and everybody came and dressed up to do it. And then 10 years later, it looked like that. And maybe my favorite project is down in Colombia, Los Gaviatos in the Amazon basin where nothing would grow. until environmentalists tried Caribbean pine. And they were at a conference and somebody said, well, why don't you try Caribbean pine, but you must use this particular species of mycorrhizal fungi. So they did, and they were so successful that they planted 20,000 acres of pine trees, which is a 30 square miles. And you might think, well, wow, that's a monoculture, but hang on. So first they started, making turpentine and a lot of different products that they were able to sell the local community. And it's a very remote area. There's no way, it's very, very difficult to get trucks in there, but they can get things out on boats. So it's very remote, but it has full employment. And over the years, the pine forest naturally diversified. And today, although they started with a monoculture, they have 256 species of rainforest plants. So they started with a savanna where nothing would grow, and now they have a rainforest, which is just so amazing. In Brazil, Ernst Grosch was he is a man from Switzerland that moved to Brazil back in the 80s. And he bought 1,200 acres of deforested land pretty cheap and set about reforesting it, rejuvenating it. And then he went on to figure out systems for creating guilds, biodiverse guilds that are repetitive and progressing. And now mostly his students are figuring out how to mechanize that same system. So there are two brothers in Australia, and father died, and he said, oh, they inherited the farm, so they split the farm down the middle with that fence row right there. And one son said, no, I'm just going to go conventional. The other guy said, no, I'm going to do it regeneratively. And after about 15, 20 years, they started digging holes on both sides of that fence, about 15 feet out from the fence in both directions. This is the chemical soil. You can see it's pretty devoid of organic matter. Then on the regenerative side, look at that black soil, 30 feet away. Beautiful. And through testing, Dr. Christine Jones figured out how much carbon it had sequestered over the years. At a rate of 37 tons per hectare per year is a phenomenal rate. Chemical people get maybe 10 tons per hectare, 4 tons per acre per year. So Whispering Winds Bamboo out in Kipahulu wanted to plant 20 acres of bamboo for sale, for timber use and also for plant use. So they just planted it right in the middle of just all the weeds you could find. And they didn't use any herbicides or any pesticides. And after 5 years, because bamboo is a pioneer plant, it just took over. And all the weeds just kind of disappeared. So plant and soil health are dependent upon biodiverse microbes. When a system is healthy, whether it's a farm, a resort, or an HOA, it uses less water and fertilizer, thus protecting our shoreline, increasing food security, and reducing inputs. But how do microbes do this? This looks like it's a small pine tree with roots, but actually that's all mycorrhizal fungi. And that fungi goes out into the soil. There's as many as 20,000 kilometers per cubic meter. That's 12,000 miles per cubic yard of material. So it goes into every nook and cranny, and there's actually a communication with the plant itself. And the plant can say, because the plant feeds the microbes, the fungi, using its own plant sugars. And it says, okay, today I need phosphorus. So the fungi goes back and brings back phosphorus. The next day it might say, no, today I need potassium. And the fungi may not have any available potassium, but it can then take that sugar and say to the bacteria, which has an enzyme that can release the bacteria, the potassium from the parent material, you use your enzymes and I'll give you some sugar. So they're actually bartering down there in an intelligence that we certainly don't fully understand yet, but it is phenomenal. And in terms of drought, the hyphae can bring back nanoparticles of water. So if it's a severe drought, even if there isn't a lot of water in the soil, it can harvest what it needs for the plant. So this increases the water holding capacity by increasing the organic matter in the soil. For every 1% of organic matter, you can hold 20,000 gallons per acre in soil. And if you can increase it by 5%, which is certainly possible in Hawaii, you can hold 100,000 gallons of water in an acre of land. So how do we make the microbes? These are what are called the Johnson-Su bioreactors. They're labor intensive, but once you get them made, they stay like that other than watering them for 6 to 12 months. The important thing is there's never any place in the system that's more than 12 inches from an air source. And then it's just a natural process as long as you keep it wet. That's the key point, keep it wet. Because once it dries out, you have to start over. You have to keep it wet. And the biomass just keeps decomposing, decomposing. It follows an evolution that is of the intelligence of nature. And the fungal growth starts immediately. This photo is about 3 days old, but it actually starts on day one. You can see the hyphae of the fungi in there. So in closing, how do microbes help? They increase soil organic matter. They release soil nutrients. They deliver them on demand to the plant. They transport water, especially during a drought conditions. They make plants disease and pest resistant. That's where the quorum sensing comes in. And they help to protect our shorelines. Okay, thank you very much. Let's see. Stop share.
Thank you, Shar. Yeah, I have learned so much more about microbes than I ever thought or ever imagined, but they are so important to stabilizing our soils and protecting our reefs. And now I'm excited to hear from Darren Strand, who's with Maui Gold Pineapple Farm, and he can talk more about their sustainability initiatives and how the test plot is going up at the farm.
All right. Thanks, Jill. And thanks, Shar, for your really humbled by your comments. I'll talk a little bit about the history of Maui Gold and pineapple farming on Maui, and then a little bit about how pineapple grows. I think it's a unique crop and makes some of these types of programs challenging and unique to work with. And then I'll talk specifically about some of our initiatives on the farm. So, pineapple's been grown on Maui for over 100 years. In 2006, Maui Land and Pineapple Company and Maui Pineapple Company closed the cannery in Kahului. And they were in the middle of a shift away from canning pineapple into looking for viable fresh fruit varieties that were, had the genetics and the characteristics to be, low acid and high sugar. And the variety 7350, which is Maui Gold, had been selected in the early 80s and was always kind of grown on the side. And at that time, we just really started planting a lot of it because it's a great pineapple. But in 2009, Maui Pineapple Company closed operations, and a lot of us were kind of scrambling. We didn't really know what we were going to do. A lot of us had been in the pineapple world for a long time, but we found some local investors, and Rudy and myself and a few other folks spun off Hailiʻilmaile Pineapple Company and Maui Gold Pineapple Company, and we transitioned from an operation that had 7,000 or 8,000 acres of pineapple planted across the island to just about 1,000 up here in Hailiʻilmaile. And this area in upcountry is really one of the best places in the world probably to grow pineapple. The soil is really fertile. We have rainfall nearly every afternoon. The daytime temperatures are in the 80s. And then we have this wonderful variety of pineapple that we grow here, and along with that, we have a group of people that work with us that are really unmatched around the world in both what they know about pineapple and the pride that they bring. So we're really lucky to be in this place growing pineapple. And most of you probably know when you plant a pineapple, we plant the crown or the slip. So vegetatively, all the pineapple in the field are genetically identical to each other. But from the time we plant to the time you get a fruit, it takes about 18 to 20 months. And over the first year of the life of that pineapple, we're irrigating and fertilizing. Traditionally, you know, going way back, they've used an assortment of fumigants and chemicals to sterilize the soil prior to planting. There was a lot of problems with nematodes and soil fungal diseases. And up until about a year and a half ago, we completely eliminated fumigants from our practice. And it was really just part of our new ownership's initiative to move away from these kind of antiquated practices and focus more on regenerative farming techniques and those kind of things. So it's been a year and a half since we've used fumigants. We're not seeing much of a decline in plant growth or any negative effects from it. We are using in the place of it some biological products, you know, some chemicals that are not chemicals, I guess they're just bacterial mixes that are to control wireworm, and we're always out seeking new products that are you know, these are these biochemicals that are able to go into the soil and help control or create an atmosphere where the nematodes are not doing so much damage. So there's about 27,000 pineapple plants in 1 acre. So the 1 acre trial that we have has 27,000 growing pineapple plants in it. And, you know, the hope at the end of that is that about 80 to 90% of them will produce a fruit that's good enough to get harvested and sold. So, you know, 1 acre doesn't seem like a lot, but 27,000 pineapple is a lot of pineapple. You know, we're in an area on the island where we do get a lot of rainfall, and we're on a sloped farming area. So we have a conservation, it's called a soil conservation plan, and we work with this with the NRCS, and they come out and they help us engineer our field and our layouts. So if you've seen our fields, all the blocks are planted on the contour. We have diversions and terracing to, you know, just yesterday we had about 1.25 inches of rain, and you know the fields are designed so that the water will move through the field, but the soil will stay on the field, so we don't have a lot of runoff. We definitely don't want to lose our soil. So one of our main practices is the elimination of fumigants. The second one is if you've been around, you've seen all the plastic involved in pineapple and sugarcane agriculture, and you know we really don't like that either. So we're moving towards we've started using. It's been about 7 or 8 months now. We're about the same time we started this project. We've moved to a tapioca-based bioplastic that's 100% biodegradable. It's made from tapioca and some other plant materials, and you know it's one of those initiatives that we're doing it. We're happy to do it, but it's got some challenges. I mean, you know, we're still farming in the middle of the Pacific, so things still have to ship here. You know, our humidity has been problematic. So when we put this plastic into storage, we have about 6 months before it starts to degrade. And so it creates a supply chain issue, but we're still using it. We're going to try a little thicker plastic, and so the company it's called Film Organic, and it's a great product if anybody is looking for compostable and natural plastic products to use. And then, we're always looking for biological control measures for nematodes and specifically the root parasitic nematodes. And one of the things that we can do by changing the soil biology is actually just create a environment where there are a lot of nematodes there, but the beneficial nematodes are competing with the root feeding nematodes, so it's not as big of a problem. And we're actually hoping that applying the SoilThrive products will help us control ants and mealybugs, which can be problematic in pineapple production because they damage the fruit and they carry a virus that can be detrimental. We have installed throughout our farm a lot of moisture sensors in each of the new irrigation sections that we move into. And the idea behind that is we want to know exactly how much water we're putting on and how it's moving through the soil. So these are soil probes that reach down about 30 inches into the soil. And we can tell from an irrigation or a rainfall event when the soil reaches a level of needing the next irrigation event. So, I mean, the last thing we want to do is apply too much water. And so that allows us to do that. We know exactly, if we irrigate with X amount of water today, we know that, in 9, 10, 11 days, the soil reaches a level where we need to irrigate again. So really basing those decisions on data instead of just past practices or kind of a checkbook approach to applying water. One of the things I think that it's unusual, I think, for larger farms to embrace a project like this, and a lot of times it's it's just not, it just doesn't line up with the initiatives of a lot of commercial and conventional farms. And I think our management group and our ownership group is really open-minded. Some of these are practices that that we didn't like, the old legacy practices. And then on top of that, we also are, one of the most important things we have is our brand value with Maui Gold, and these practices obviously help with that. And then we have to coexist with our tours. So at any day, we might have 150 to 200 visitors come onto our farm, and we can't be farming in a way that's not friendly to people accessing it. So when you come on our tour, you go right to the area where we're harvesting, right to the area where we're planting and operating. And so these types of practices really allow us to bring our visitors and tell our story better. And obviously our customers expect, and customers in general, I think today compared to 10, 15, 20 years ago, they expect a level of responsibility in their food products, in their agricultural products, that's not always maintained by traditional agricultural practices. And then finally, with specific to this project, we've really seen better growth on the plants than I anticipated. We take tissue samples of the plants every 2 to 3 months, and so we're seeing that, yeah, there's some nutrient levels that are different from our other plants, but generally the plant growth is very similar. And it's interesting. So we'll measure the leaf color, and this is something that's been done for 50 to 60 years in pineapple. And so the leaf colors are on a scale of 3, which is a very, very dark green, to 0, which is a kind of a yellow leaf. And we really want to be at a 1 or a 2, because if you're at a 2 or a 3 or a 3 in color, it really means you're over fertilizing, because the plant is not, you want it to kind of be growing faster or as fast as the amount of fertilizer you're putting in. So that's something else that we measure. When we first started the project, I think there's a picture in the press release where it shows Robin and her son out like manually applying the brewed SoilThrive product. And we've really moved from that to a point now where every other week Robin shows up with 100 gallons of brewed material, and eventually we'll brew this on site. and it goes right into our equipment, and it's sprayed on the field. So it went from a practice that really took probably part of a day to brew the product, and part of a day to apply it, to something that takes us 15 to 20 minutes from start to finish, once every couple of weeks. So I think that's really for us the next step is scaling this up. So we're treating 1 acre out of 757. So, that's really the next approach for us. And I'm sure that I've left a lot of details out, but when we get to the Q&A, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's been so great, all of us working together. I'm going to open up the Q&A. So if you all want to come on screen again, Shar, if you're still there, I'll start going through some of the questions. So again, if you have questions, then you can relay them into the Q&A. If you're watching on Facebook, you can leave a comment, and then those questions will be relayed to me. So first question, which I think this might be good for Shar, and I can chime in as well, but what role does biochar play in soil health?
So biochar, depending on the complexity of it, is a great place for microbes to live. And there's actually, it actually gives shelter to microbes that other microbes are trying to eat. So it really increases the surface area of the soil, and it makes microbes, do better. And it's also a good way to apply the microbes depending on what your system is.
Yeah, I like to think of the biochar like granules. Even though they're small, they have a really big surface area, and they have little pores that the microbes can kind of tuck into, and can also help retain water, just like the microbes can.
Absolutely. It's just financially not usually that effective. It's very expensive. The cheapest you'll get biochar is $400 a ton.
Yeah, can you
Ship.
go into details of what biochar is for maybe those who aren't?
Yeah, actually, I spent years studying biochar and pyrolysis. So it's created by a system called pyrolysis, slow pyrolysis. There are different kinds. There's batch pyrolysis and there's continuous flow. And you start out with the biomass. Let's take wood, and you chip it up to it's a small diameter, and then you run it through this system where it in ideal system, it heats up to 500 degrees, minimum 500 degrees Celsius for at least 20 minutes. So it's got a dwell time. So if you're putting it through an auger, it heats up and it stays at that high temperature. And that's why that burns off any sort of toxins. So if you are using a toxic material, for example, garbage, you heat it up to that temperature, all the longer compounds break down into simple compounds, and that's what detoxifies it. So yeah, and then you quench it after that. You have to cool it down quickly. So biochar is very simple to activated carbon. The only difference is the size of the surface area, basically.
Right, and Hailiʻilmaile biochar is making that here on island as well.
Right, and I don't know what system. I'm assuming they're using a batch system. I heard they got some new equipment. I'd love to see it. I don't know what kind it is. It's really,
I'm not sure either.
It's really hard to find small equipment, so I'm curious what they've got.
Yeah, I know that they're scaling up. They are using eucalyptus stands to make the biochars. Taking on species, which is great. Thank you for explaining that a little bit more. Darren, I have a question for you. Will the biodegradation of the tapioca-based field materials affect the microbiology of the soil? Will it add sugars to feed bacteria and other critters?
I actually really don't know what happens to the tapioca as it it decomposes. But the main purpose of one of the first things we tried obviously was just not using any plastic at all. Just planting right into straight beds, even using plant litter or rolling down grasses and planting into that. But one of the biggest changes that we see in growth of the pineapple is due to the temperature increase of having that plastic and having a raised bed. So the soil temperature in that area is about 7 or 8 degrees higher than it would be without the plastic, and probably about 10 degrees higher than if we just planted into flat ground. And so it's a very significant growth rate change in the early pineapple growth for that. So that's the reason that we use the plastic. And then it also the pineapple are planted so close together that it's really hard to control weeds in that double row space. And so it allows us to really spend the first few months of the time not fighting weeds, but letting the pineapples grow and adding fertility to that, and not weeds. But I don't know. I'll ask what the breakdown products are of that. And it
Awesome.
obviously helps with early water loss. And the idea of the reason why we're also looking for about 6 months of coverage on the soil before it starts to decompose is at that time the pineapple leaves close in and create a canopy over themselves. And so they're now you don't have exposed soil, so you're not losing soil moisture to direct sunlight and evaporation that way. So the plastic actually holds moisture into the soil for that first few months until the leaves cover up.
Awesome. Is there a timeline for potentially expanding the test plot at Maui Gold? I know that we started this one in May and we're going through the full cycle on this plot, so into 2025. But what would that look like for expanding and scaling up, I guess?
Well, we'll have all the information on the trial in next November, basically, right? That'll be when we harvest the fruit from this section, and then we'll have collected all the data on it. So I mean, it's really it's really premature to say that, like, how well it's working or anything like that until we get all the way to the end and we measure the characteristics of the fruit. It looks like, for all intents and purposes, it's working really well. I think if we had the capacity to expand it today, we certainly could. It's becoming easier and easier to incorporate into our operation, and so those roadblocks, really aren't there. And I think at some point when we start talking about these practices in larger agricultural operations, we really have a supply side problem of local composting systems. There's Hawaii Earth Products on Oahu that does has this huge operation for compost, but we can't we really shouldn't be shipping compost in between the islands, and we can't with invasive species issues. So I think we really need to start a conversation about regional composting systems and how we're going to fund those, because I think it's just like biochar. When you start talking about putting on compost or compost teas, you're talking about tons of product. Right now we're using like 2 pounds to make 100 gallons of compost tea, and it's really rich and it's great. But again, to scale that up to our farm, to other farms, I think it's gonna, the next question is, how do we scale up compost creation?
Right. Okay, I think this is a question also for you, Darren. You briefly mentioned some indicators you're looking at for you're looking for in pineapples, specifically in the test plot. Can you elaborate a little more on what success might look like from this test plot?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, just standard farming metrics, like we're still like worried about yield of pineapple, and in how much packable pineapple we get out of an acre. The size of the pineapple is important. So the health of the plant directly correlates to how large the plant will produce. So we'll take data on all those kind of things. And then I think, we're also going to see some very significant savings in agricultural chemicals, both fertilizers and pesticides. So at the end of this, we'll have measured that. And I think that it's and again, it's just so even if it reduces our, and I want to say that a lot of times I think why I mentioned, a lot of commercial farms don't want to participate in programs like this because they're just kind of stuck in their ways or whatever the reason is. But success really isn't like to me, it's not 100% conversion to one practice, and failure isn't like just living in your old practice. But it's, even if we're able to reduce our inputs by 25% or 30%, that's a successful program to me. And so working on what that looks like is, is what it is. So we're, Shar and Robin are collecting all kinds of data, and we'll get that all as we move along. But at this point in time, I think it looks very favorable. So the concerns for me to expand the project again would be like how well it fits into the commercial operation, and those things seem to be doing okay. There's no roadblocks there.
Awesome. Thank you. A question in the Q&A. How does or I understand pineapple is the main product, but how is Maui Gold diversifying the surrounding fields to increase ecological diversity and potentially create habitat pathworks?
Yeah, I mean, we get so for us right now, we kind of, we finish the pineapple harvest. So, we plant the pineapple, it grows for a year and a half, and we harvest that first pineapple. A year later, we'll harvest the second pineapple in the ratoon crop. And then the process kind of starts all over again. And we'll generally leave those pineapple plants on the soil, just kind of anchoring the soil there. And then we'll start to disc those down 6 months to a year prior to scheduling planting again. One of the problems we have when you start to think about disking them down, possibly using a cover crop or something like that, is we don't really have a lot of extra water in our system. So we barely have enough to grow the crop that we're growing. If we planted 50 to 100 acres of cover crop, we'd have to find water for that. But we're looking at, we just looked today at seasonal cover cropping and what those plants might look like, to attract pollinators, or, what type of plants we would use, and growing those over the winter months, and then just kind of letting them dry down in the summer months. And then, there's a lot of benefits to that if it can control, soil fungus. You can choke out other weeds that might be hard to control. But it's really hard for us. There really shouldn't be much land in our 757 acres that isn't in some stage of growth.
Great, thank you. And before we start wrapping up, we're coming up on 6:30. I want to be respectful of everyone's time this evening. Who does Maui Gold anticipate selling this first round of RFL pineapples to? Is there a special buyer that's interested in this type of product, or will they be lumped in with the rest of the pineapples?
I hadn't even that's a great question. I hadn't even had that thought, but definitely we should look at how we're gonna follow those into the marketplace. So that's a great idea.
Awesome. And then how do we plan to use the new compost tea brewer? It is, for the test plot, but how do you see it, fitting in the future?
I think for us, so we still generate a lot of waste on our farm. So we have a lot of pineapple crowns and skins and waste materials. So bringing in other products so that we can create a compost on site, and then actually kind of maybe geographically have our own closed system right here, I think is something that we'd be interested in doing. And then you know, Robin has to make so much product all the time for all the projects that you guys have that I think it just gives us the opportunity. If she drops off at this point in time, since we're not composting, but if she drops off a few pounds of compost, you know, we can make 100 gallons. And I think that's important too. So we're making 100 gallons and we're, you know, we're adding a couple 100 gallons of water. And so we're putting on about 400 gallons of this solution over that acre. And we're really drenching the plants with it. So
Perfect. And last question, do rats bother pineapple?
they do. They mostly eat the drip tape and do damage to our irrigation system. But they do not, you know, I think there's other things that they'd rather eat than a spiky pineapple plant or fruit.
So interesting. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'm going to close us out with a few slides, but again, just thank you both so much for your partnership and your support to make this test plot happen and sort of branch out the Reef Friendly Landscaping Program from private kind of hotel properties and businesses into agriculture. So we were just very appreciative for you guys being open-minded and taking those next steps to support us. It's been awesome.
Thank you.
Again, tonight's presentation was a part of Maui Nui Marine Resource Council's monthly Know Your Ocean speaker series. It's held on the first Wednesday of every month at 5:30 p.m. via Zoom. It's sponsored by the County of Maui. Next month, we'll have Caesar and Liz from Aqualink and Hui Oka Viola and talking about water quality. So we have Aqualink buoys out at 3 spots around Maui that record live oceanographic data, and you can find them all at aqualink.com. So we will have a presentation on that and the data that we've collected so far. And don't forget, enrollment for the last RFL course of the year is open and starts a week from Friday. If you have any questions, please get in touch with us and we'll be happy to answer any of those that you might have. A recording of tonight's talk will be sent out via email, so make sure you get on our mailing list by using the link that was put into the chat. And we also want to say mahalo to our sponsors and supporters who care about protecting our island's ecosystems just like you do. Mahalo again, everyone. Have a wonderful night. We'll see you next month. Hui ho.